This is Comics vs. Show for The Walking Dead, Season 5, Episode 16, Conquer. This is just a fun look at some of the similarities and differences between the comic and the show for this episode. I can't list them all, but here are the ones that really stood out to me. In the comics, after Michonne hits Rick on the back of the head, Rick doesn't then wake up in a room like we see he does in the show. In the comics, he looks around and realizes that he is being a total ass. Also, there's no meeting in the comics to talk about whether they should expel Rick. In the comics, the leader of Alexandria shows up later to Rick's room and talks to him and basically says, "Hey, you can stay. But don't continue this shit and don't make me have to kill you." And part of the reason also why he goes to talk to Rick in the room is to decide whether or not he should allow Rick to keep his gun. So, in the show we see them have a meeting and deciding to expel Rick out, but in the comics there was no thought about kicking him out. In the comics, Rick is glared at by a group of women, not men, on his way home. That's minor, but that actually really stood out to me in the show. In the comics, there is talk about Davidson during the whole Rick goes crazy part, but the leader of Alexandria talks about Davidson to Rick in the comics, and it's during the whole, if you continue to do this crap, I will kill you. But in the show, we see that it's Aaron talking to Daryl about Davidson. Just like in the show, in the comics, Pete does come at Rick, angry about being in a new house that isn't his home. And Pete does end up slitting the throat of the leader of Alexandria's spouse in his anger. And the best part, the end scene where Deanna looks at Rick and says, "Rick, do it," happened just like in the comics, down to the line in the dying spouse. That was like my favorite part of the whole finale, was having the leader of Alexandria go, "Rick, do it," just like in the comics. And Rick does shoot Pete, and the shot is in the show is almost exactly like the panel in the comics, and I think they did an awesome job with it. And then I guess the most obvious change would be, in the show, we show that Morgan found Daryl and Aaron, and then that's how they got reintroduced to Rick and Co., but Rick actually is the one who ends up running into Morgan again and then taking him with him. So those were my favorite similarities and differences. You can write yours below. Also make sure you check our Walking Dead finale review later today.